Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bibliomancy for Beginners.
We made
I'm calling this Spooksgiving because it was supposed to be our Halloween episode, but yesterday was Thanksgiving, so it's Spooksgiving. You see what I did there?
We missed Halloween, so we had to go for the next scariest holiday, which is Black Friday. Because we work in retail, so we can confirm.
It wasn't that bad.
It
I
is
feel like if
basically
we
Christmas
read them
now.
all,
Yeah, it would have been bad other places.
Really
but like, I can make a really good Black Friday joke out of it. So
it's true.
just ride it into the sunset.
Also, Thanksgiving celebrates the massacre of thousands of people. It's also spooky.
Not nearly as much as Columbus Day does. Fortunately, we missed that too.
Yeah.
But Thanksgiving genocide is closer.
Really, all of our holidays are just for one terrible thing after the other.
Except for Arbor Day. Trees, everybody!
Michaela, I'm gonna steer away from real politics, but the planet is dying, Michaela. Arbor Day is just a reminder how you failed.
But it's not a description of a massacre.
No,
Well,
but it's just atrocity. It's a massacre of trees, of the planet.
All right, so anyways, let's talk about some disappointing horror.
No.
Whoa. Not even gonna get the title in.
This time we read Let Me In by John, I'm going to try and do this, John Ajvide Lindqvist. The V is a W, right, in Swedish, Taylor?
I need to actually be looking at his name right now because I can't do this off of memory, I'm afraid.
I mean, it looks like the last name of the Rangers goalies, whose last name is Henrik Lundqvist. So I'd go with Lindqvist.
It is Lindqvist. Rough. I just don't remember what his middle name is.
Ajvide.
Yeah, I can't spell things in my head. Just keep going.
Okay. Well, it's a vampire book. It primarily takes place in Stockholm, Sweden, because this is a Swedish author. It was translated from Swedish by a person who I am forgetting right now and is only on the mother-loving title page. First published in Sweden. Translated by Ebba Segerberger.
Gesundheit.
Thanks.
Who goes for the
That's like
pork
Meisterberger. Yeah, so she doesn't get Aba. Sounds like a female. She or he doesn't get a whole lot of billing on this guy. You might see it by the title Let the Right One In. It gets translated both ways. It's possible to be read both ways, I guess, in the original Swedish. So you might see it by that title, but it is the same novel. It's pretty long. It's like 500 pages almost.
Yeah, it was a longer one. I think it's Ajvide Lindqvist by Lindqvist.
Ajvide.
Yeah, Lindqvist. Yeah, roughly. And by the way, his Wikipedia picture is wonderful. So just go look that up sometime, everyone.
Apparently, he's Sweden's Stephen King. So.
He grew up in the town of Blackeberg, where this is set, which is kind of creepy.
Okay.
I guess it's like doing everything in Maine, but.
Can I continue, or are you going to interrupt me again?
No, I was just adding that.
Okay.
Keep going.
If you haven't read the book, we do always start with spoiler-free overall reviews, but I will also read the back of the book for you. The back of the book says, an international publishing sensation, Let Me In is the terrifying yet moving tale of two lonely adolescents who stand together against the world. Begins with the horrific discovery of the body of a teenage boy emptied of blood. Our 12-year-old hero is personally hoping that revenge has come at long last. Revenge for all the bad things the bullies at school do to him day after day. While he is fascinated by the murder, it is not the most important thing in his life. A new girl has moved in next door, a girl who has never seen a Rubik's Cube before, but who can solve it at once. They become friends, then something more. But there is something wrong with her, something odd, and she only comes out at night. I like that the sentence, they become friends, then something more, is like, so... Thanks, very descriptive. Vampire, small children, murders.
Surprise, that's what her secret is.
It is not very surprising.
No.
Yes! So my spoiler-free opinion. I went on Goodreads when I finished this book, and I think I rated it 2 stars. And so there are 2 ways you can take that if you know me as a reader. Because if you know me as a reader, then you know I don't do horror. Like, I don't like to be scared. I don't do that. The horror person is Michaela. So, like, if you saw that, you'd be like, oh, it was too scary for her. She rated it down. No, I was not scared by this book at all. Mm-hmm. I was bored. I was so bored. And it just kept going. And it was like, oh, this thing happened. And very few of the events even made me uncomfortable, because a horror, doesn't have to be like, ooh, jump scare. It can be, psychologically disturbing. And there was very little of that in this book for me. It was slow. It had a lot of pieces that, like, congealed together, I suppose, into a larger storyline, like a slow sludge monster. And I just didn't find it, like, any of it satisfying, like the ending, anything. I was just like, not really feeling it. So not scary, and made of too many boring parts. That's what I think.
Gretchen did not like it.
No, I appreciated certain aspects of it, but, like, overall, no.
I did like it. I agree that I don't think it was really scary. There were some moments where I was like, that's really, wow, that went there. So it did have sort of shock value in that way. And I do feel like it was more of, like, not body horror, but psychological, in the way that it's about human beings being more monstrous than the monsters.
It's true crime.
Yeah.
It's a true crime novel, but vampire thing.
True crime.
I got
Fiction.
my echo through your end, and that was very disconcerting. Sorry.
It's because you were loud.
I'm whispering. I just need to whisper.
So yeah, that was a thing. It felt like a true crime novel in the way that it's, like, following all of these characters and this sort of, like, traumatizing, horrific events that happen, with the end result being, it's just a vampire.
Wow.
I liked it. I liked that it wasn't, like, romanticizing the vampire bit.
No, I like that
at
too.
all.
Everything sucked.
Very interesting things that it could have done that it then didn't do in order to talk about cats. Those poor kitties.
Yeah, I liked it. I gave it, like, 4 stars. It wasn't, like, a mind-blowing horror book. It wasn't really scary, but I liked the way it was constructed. I liked the pacing of it, and I liked sort of how all the pieces fit together in the end.
I'm going to back up Michaela on this for the most part, where I...
Of course you are. What a shock.
I enjoyed this for the most part. I didn't... I wasn't sure it was supposed to be scary, and even when it was, like, kind of weird or disturbing, it was mildly so. I think that's just kind of a given with the bleakness of Scandinavian literature. It's Always Winter and We All Die.
Yeah.
I was kind of moving through the Swedish movies of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo earlier in the year. So I was kind of already like, yeah, this is about right. It's all just generations of murder and tragedy. And this was really more of a Shakespearean tragedy than even the true crime suggestion I gave to Michaela. Because sure, it's just trying to track like murder and all of the story around that. But it's also just how everyone who was influenced by this just ends up in an awful position. It's just that's what I took away from this book. It's just, this is a parasite, and here's everyone suffering. That being said, I did enjoy it. I thought a lot of the aspects were interesting. I found some characters to be oddly endearing in the midst of this story. So overall, definitely.
You just have to be more in, like, you have to be ready to think about it as a think piece, and not like, I don't know, when I heard they made a horror movie out of it, when I heard like all this stuff like vampire, like I was ready like for some kind of that aspect to come into it. And every single time like a new character was introduced or something else happened. But there's also, I will stand by your points being valid, and that this is just not a book for the kind of reader that I am. But I also will hold to the fact that this book has a weird plot that, like, with the plot arcs and the plot lines, and it doesn't end in a satisfying way. Like it just doesn't come together
weird.
right.
Yeah, no, it is weird. I mean, it's like equal parts about pedophilia as it is about vampires, and that wasn't even the major plot point in it. It just is a recurring thing. So
yeah,
it was definitely a interestingly constructed book, I guess, in the stories it decides to tell.
So, spoiler time?
Spoiler time.
Yeah.
All right. If you don't want to be spoiled and you want to go read the book or watch the Swedish version of the movie or watch the American version of the movie, go do that and come back and listen to us talk about it if you want. If you don't mind being spoiled, then by all means stick around and listen to us chat and make fun of the fighting that I'm sure is about to happen.
All right.
We can do this now. I think
the
this is actually
spoiler warning.
Our first book club, right? Since this has happened. So this is exciting.
So the spoiler warning is in, right? Everything's fair game?
Yep.
Okay, Michaela, real talk. How do they deal with Chloe Grace Moretz in the American version?
It's Moretz.
Moretz? Sure, Moretz.
Yeah.
How do they deal with her being a centuries-old vampire whose penis fell off?
They don't.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
They just don't go near it.
No.
Yeah, okay.
I
was
want to know
actually
what the
curious.
Swedes did.
No.
That's especially for an American audience, that is so far away from anything they would be willing to touch, like at all.
They completely drop the pedophilia aspect. They completely drop the question of the gender, Eli's gender there. There's interesting things in the way that they implied how this was happening. So, old man dude, the pedophile dude, whose name I don't remember.
Acid Face.
Yeah, Acid Face.
Haken.
Haken.
Hakan.
Haken. It's basically implied that he is what Oscar will be in like 40 years. So like this person that she courted and then is using as like her daytime protector / blood bringer, and then she gets a new one.
He?
They never question it. She's just Chloe Grace Moretz.
Okay. Oh, okay. That. Okay. I was like, because the book switches pronouns for Eli.
Yeah.
Like,
not really.
Over.
Like, from Oscar's perspective, he still sometimes calls Eli a she.
Yeah, but like in all of the Eli sections, Eli becomes a he.
Yeah.
And
which
Oscar
is weird because
gets
Eli
better
doesn't like conceptualize
Gender.
themselves that way.
No.
I don't know. I would be really curious, like if I spoke the language this is originally written in, because I don't know how this language functions with genders. You know what I mean? Like how much of that was a English translation decision? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But whatever. I thought that was interesting. I thought like the discussion of what is gender in this book was not something that I was expecting from like a parasite pedophilia like vampire novel, but that was I appreciated that. That was very interesting. Not explored to the extent that it could have been, but I thought that was interesting. I'll give it props for that.
Yeah.
The wikis genders the Swedish Eli or Eli as male, whereas it genders Chloe as female. So I think the Swedish one actually deals with that. Just a side note.
Okay. I haven't seen the Swedish one. I only saw the American version, and they completely ignore that aspect.
I was just reinforcing
it's necessary for the story.
No, but it's an interesting aspect of it.
I think that's one of the things that keeps it from being like just another horror story, which I think is, I mean, obviously I haven't seen the American movie, but I think that like as you're conceptualizing the book as like an American horror, like mainstream horror movie creator, like it doesn't fit that mold, so like it's not important in that way.
No, they focused a lot more on I want to say the like, I don't know how to say this. Like they just follow the Eli and Oscar plot. Like they don't care about the other plot points and all of the other things. Like what's her face doesn't get bit and turned into a vampire.
Which is kind of like what Gretchen wanted. Yeah,
so it's more of what Gretchen wanted, where it was just these two characters and like their interactions and what it was. And Hawking happens, goes up to the point where he gets acid in his face, and then they like let him die there. So like he falls out of the window and it's dead.
But also, I mean, I do want to bring this up too, and I'm not sure if it's what I wanted or what I expected. Because I think that is something, like I was saying, going into this, was that reaction colored by the expectations? Because I didn't go into it thinking that it was going to be such a slow, meandering burn. And I mean, yes, I don't like that in general, but I also, that also wasn't what I set myself up
because
for.
When you're like horror, it's going to be fast and exciting and all of
yeah, or at least like make me feel something.
No, and I actually, for the most part, prefer this to like flashy, gory horror because it's
more engaging.
This one, when something really sort of like it's such like a normal book, and then you get a scene where like you're getting like the vivid description of a guy getting acid poured over his face, or the vivid description of a woman going slowly insane and like cutting herself and like drinking the blood out of her own body.
It was very reminiscent to reading The Ruins, which was not something I enjoyed reading, but did. The cutting open of the body. It's a very squirmy thing, at least for me as a reader.
So it had those elements of horror, and it sort of let those be the horror elements and let the rest of the story unfold around them. It wasn't like trying to be a horror book. It was just like, let me tell this story that has horrific elements.
Definitely. It's just,
I mean, I think for me too, there's definitely something in the prose style that's connected to this. Obviously, this book was not originally written in English, does not have to follow English conventions, but as, you know, traditionally English readers in the American contemporary setting, things like the conversations that would just blocks of dialogue. Like, I'm not against that, but like seeing it incorporated into a novel as like a typical way to like have a conversation, not just used for sometimes it was like used for emphasis, but like that was built into it. That was weird. And like things like that for me don't work because I can't visualize that conversation. It just ends up being words on a page. So like that didn't help me sink into that very much. Because like I don't know if it was just because I was bored or what, but like the squicky scenes, this didn't make me feel anything, which again, that's actually very difficult when I'm reading something squicky or horror, because like I'm very easily squicked. Like I don't
such squick.
I don't like it. I don't. So I mean there is that too. I don't know.
John, god damn it. Hold on.
Too popular to be
Hold on.
right
I'm getting messages.
Taylor, why don't you and I actually have a discussion like we're supposed to be?
I think we're ready to move on at the very least.
Oh,
right?
So I mean, do you not have anything to say on the prose, like the prose style? That just like you were like, what man?
It reads like an averagely translated work, where it's just a lot more focused on meaning than any real poetry. And it's not like I imagine the original language went for anything other than a very straightforward, realistic tone. So it was writing-wise something I kind of didn't acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, well, fine.
Sorry, it was just
Keep my educated opinions to my own educated brain, and we can have it later. No, I'm kidding.
If you have, I would not want to, lock anything in that brain rattling about.
You don't want to leave anything in there. It's a scary place.
Okay.
So what would you like to talk about?
Oh, I was just saying I didn't have. Michaela seems to be window wiping with enthusiasm, so I'm gonna
wax on, wax off.
Pass the mic.
Mic drop. Yeah. I had, as somebody who has studied translation, there were definitely moments when reading this where I was like pulled out of the narrative for like translation / structuring things, particularly with, for me, the point of view, because there were times where it very much felt like it was almost first person, not quite, because it was like a third person omniscient, and then there were other times where it felt like this was like a narrator telling us a story, in the way that the sentences were constructed, like just a shift in sometimes like Eli to he, like just that subtle difference, like telescoped the whole thing, which for me was like they couldn't figure out how to consistently present this, so they kept going back and forth as a translator of like, this is going to be like a third person type thing, this is going to be an almost first person type thing, this is going to be like an alternative like omniscient narrator, like particularly because I it's freshest in my mind, the scene with the squirrel where like you're learning like from the point of view of this squirrel who's witnessing this thing happening, and the squirrel's like, I don't know if that thing can climb, so I'm gonna go farther up this tree. You never know. And I'm like, that's weird. Like it was put into the original text, but it stood out from the blocks of text on either side of it, in like the way that it was being told.
Similar to that, I think, were the short sections by characters that only have their one-time appearance, basically. So the doctor performing the autopsy, the fellow who was killed first, Laka, or was it Yaka? Yaka, I think, was the one who was killed first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So his scene, and then the Spanish gym teacher. When they all have their, or even the fellow driving on the highway. Anyway, there are those characters have their short scenes, and then it goes for a very narrator heavy feeling. Like, it gives a lot of background on their story and their epic and what has led them to this point in a way that the other more common characters don't really get in the same way, or at least it kind of sinks into that. So those are just jarring moments in the prose that remind me of that squirrel, where it's very clearly supposed to be a different voice or anything or something.
Yeah.
But it really
and
just...
Again, without reading the original Swedish text, we have no idea if that was like part of it. Like there was this like take a moment out vignette sort of like mini chapter thing, or if that was like, it felt like a translation thing though. I can't say for sure, but like how sporadic it was, it didn't seem purposeful.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not at the point of being able to read the original, so I can't help you there.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I would agree with you, because it's just like, I think, like as a writer, like when you sit down as a writer to write a whole text, like something that out of sync with itself, like can't come from one person who has written an entire thing. I think especially what made like signal that to me was that this, again, is conceptualized as a large interconnected think piece. So like you'd think that the original focus would have been on making these disparate pieces come together.
Yeah. Even like that showed up at moments where we were supposed to be drawn out because something horrific was happening, which can also be used where like the narrative style changes slightly to create discomfort in the reader on purpose because the things that they're reading is uncomfortable. They're just like, here's a fucking squirrel.
And sometimes it felt like he was just trying to write to a different form than a book. Like he was trying to shift to a movie's style of giving information. So instead of a character-driven scene, it's just, a silent moment of observing the squirrel or something, and that was his only way into it.
Which is...
it reminds me of Gretchen and my sci-fi and fantasy writing teacher, who would always be calling people out on not writing like book work, like not writing, just like, no, this is what you're doing is composing a TV shot, and that's not flowing here.
All of my writing is that. Who needs dialogue? Just describe everything that's happening.
Or, I mean, but that was also the difference in the book. It was like, describe everything, or they're having a conversation and all there is dialogue. Like, there was no in between there.
Yeah.
It was just like, blah, 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 blah. Or
sometimes I liked that, though, especially when it was Oscar and Eli, the dialogue back and forth thing, because it felt really like this sort of give and take with them, that there were times where they were sort of becoming one, especially with the weird, like, kissing flashback thing that they do. But it was like they confuse themselves and start mixing, and when they do that, like, back and forth thing, it made sense there.
I'm sorry,
the world fades away.
All I was thinking of was Spock and Kirk doing a Vulcan mind meld through the mouth. It was just like, I needed this not be in my head.
They kissed a bunch, Gretchen.
What?
You know Kirk and Spock kissed a bunch.
I mean, probably, but also it was just like very weird. It was very weird.
Did you know that Maddie does YouTube videos?
No.
Yeah, okay. I just thought about that. Sorry, I just remembered that.
All right. Come back.
Hey, books. There was something else I wanted to talk about. You had issues with the ending. Do you want to talk about why it was unsatisfying for you?
I think, well, because we discussed this a little bit too, and it's like the book, because it is so far-reaching with so many characters, it opens up so many plot lines. And then by about the middle of the book, they're all done. Like, they're all closing or have been closed in a certain way. And so that's really weird because you still have like 100, 200 pages left. And you're like, what are you going to fill this with, Prim? Because
Sadness.
so many things that you've been attached to have already resolved themselves. And I also felt like, in a way, the goriness of the ending didn't match up with the slow burn of the rest of it, first of all. Second of all, like, it felt like what had happened with the boys, like the fact that, like, he just burned all the images of our father, blah, 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 was shoehorned in to let this scene happen. And then, like, he just leaves. Like, I don't know. It was just like, it was partially the ending, but also partially how the ending was like caboosed onto the rest of the novel. And I was like, I'm so confused. It just, like, in the terms of a complete arc, it was just like, here is the arc of the where'd you go? Arc? Story arc? Arc?
I can agree
Bueller?
that him leaving at the end can feel weird depending on how you want to look at it. I'm still not entirely sold that it's the strongest ending, but you know, it works. It is the whole thing kind of why I was thinking of it as a Shakespearean tragedy, where it's just like super, super slow burn, and then everyone dies in the last act with poison and stabbing, and then like one person walks on stage just like, what?
I went to the bathroom. What happened?
I guess I'm king of Denmark.
Yeah. So here's how I felt reading this. And I said this to you when I was about halfway through, that this was very much a story of a place and how this vampire coming to this place affected everyone there. And
like
they do sort of start spiraling into each other at the end, but it takes a really long time, and then the end happens like this. Like the last section is the smallest section, and it follows the largest section, which is after that point where you were like, everything is being resolved.
But then also the ending, if it is a story of the place, it is like, it's not in the place, it's on the train. It's this tiny child having left his home because he, like, whatever.
So many people just were murdered.
Yeah, it just didn't fit.
It doesn't feel like a very promising ending. Like, is this The Graduate of horror novels?
Yes.
They're both.
I feel like the ending is supposed to imply like the how did it start? What was
it's basically you're going that it's basically a cycle. They're just gonna roll into the next town.
Right.
Try to bang the child.
Because I know that the first part was a description of travel as well, wasn't it?
It was a description. The first part is the location. It's literally a description of the location. So if you mean the first,
but like the first one, I'm gonna read. You talk about something.
It's the girl and her dad coming into this place.
And the first actual thing
is him talking to the police officer about drugs.
No, Michaela's talking that they describe the house that Ellie lives in, and like the coming into the house, moving in.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing, where this is ending with they're just gonna go on to the next town, and Eli is a plague.
Hakan. It's him on a train coming to the place. Next station, Rocksta. It was a little softer and rounder than those places, although here was a real skyscraper. Please stand back from the doors. The doors are closing. Like, it's him bringing her to the place. And we are introduced to the place and introduced to Oscar prior to this, but it does start with this description of them arriving. So at the end, it's a description of them leaving.
Okay, I mean, I guess I'm also just less on board with it just because of how young Oscar is.
Is this,
like,
what, 12?
Yeah, because like Hawken can do what he does for Eli because he can functionally move around in society as at his age, because he's an adult. But like Oscar can't do for Eli what Hawken's doing because he's tinny. He's this big.
He's a teeny little puppy.
So like, I mean, you're grooming a 12-year-old serial killer. So like, good job. Go with that. But like, yeah.
Also, I realized there's the little O. By the way, I listened to this on audiobook, so I haven't actually seen the spelling. Hawken has a little O over the first A, so it's Hoken.
Hoken.
Okay. Okay. So here's the Earth.
But yeah, vampires are bad. Grr, I'm with you.
Oh. Taylor, did you just flip the table? Taylor?
That's slightly terrifying.
Taylor, come back.
I feel like his external screen dropped.
Yeah.
All right, so we definitely also have to talk about Virginia.
Yeah.
So I'll bring that up while Taylor is
Actually gone.
Bye.
Rude.
You
didn't like that bit, right?
No, he's back. Say, hey.
Yeah. Remember how my external monitor is behind my laptop? It's currently on a very precarious pile of books, and then it decided not to be anymore. Shut my laptop screen, rage quit.
I do have that effect on people.
We were going to talk about Virginia and her arc, I guess.
Yeah. Because I think out of all of the side arcs, like I found the one about like Tommy and Stefan, like that whole thing, like I found that real dumb. So we can talk about that later. But I felt like Virginia's storyline was actually interesting. I think that was the thing that made me think the most, like underneath like Eli's gender question mark.
I would agree.
Was that.
Yeah. It was. I understand why the Tommy and Stefan thing was a thing. It's supposed to be the correlation to the end when the bullying thing happens in that very last scene there. But we don't care at all about them.
We don't. We spend like dozens and dozens of pages on that stupid trophy he dropped into a bush. Like, I don't care. But Virginia being turned, and then the way that she chooses to go about that, especially put side by side with Eli's own discussion of like, most people like me choose to end themselves, and then literally watching the spiral of Virginia being like, no, this is fine, I'm totally gonna make it, I'm gonna go to my friend's place and kill him and drink his blood because like, no, this won't matter and I can do this, and then deciding
no, because like the person she actually loves is the closest to her, and she's just like, you know what, not worth it. And
then he literally has to watch her burn up.
Her arc felt relevant, human, and very clear, I would say, because like other ones just, we spend so much time wondering why are we doing this. Hers always was rooted in, okay, this is the story that's being told.
And hers was the catalyst for Eli being found out and like actually needing to leave. So like the Tommy and Stefan plot arc was the Tommy's the guy in the basement, right?
Yes.
I'm doing that right. His arc was leading to the end of Hoken, right? Because it's this like him being super apathetic and like not sure what to do with his life and all of these things, and like his weird parent issues when this guy is coming down to do that. He thinks his soon-to-be stepson's doing drugs, so he's like, I'm gonna have this talk, and you get this cop soon-to-be stepfather walking in on his soon-to-be stepson literally beating a pile of meat and singing a weird fucking song about an elephant. Like,
that was just
Are we putting the song as the weird thing in this situation? Like, that's...
The whole thing was weird. And I felt really bad for him because he's traumatized for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that felt also really odd to be like right back to back with him, like flipping out about the newspaper and the sheep. Like he was in the newspaper about the sheep photo, and I was just like, I'm not like feeling anything, but just like slightly disturbed in the wrong way. Like,
he was very much this innocent that got dragged into the story and is perhaps one of the most negatively affected survivors of the story, because like there's a bunch of people who die, sure, but like he survives that and is probably going to need to like have some hardcore therapy.
Although like Oscar's mom did not get nearly enough play. I think that she was portrayed as a very loving mom who like really cared about her son and had a really close relationship with her son, and was doing her best to raise him despite, you know, Oscar's dad, and like, but trying to, even though she hated him, trying to help her son maintain a relationship with her father.
Yeah.
And I felt like she was someone who was not explored at all.
We never got her perspective. It was always Oscar's.
And she just lost her son. Like, her tiny son just ran away from home. And she's got to be like, I literally tried to do everything. I tried to do everything right. Yeah. And, you know, my son just burnt down the school, murdered some people, and ran away.
Yeah. Like, no. An angel murdered those people, tore their heads off, and threw the heads in the pool.
Poor mom.
She honestly...
Moms are the real
victim. I get it, but I also understand why Oscar left. And we are supposed... I think that it lapsed a little in the middle when we were very closely following what was happening with Tommy and what was happening with, what's her face? Virginia. Mm-hmm. We didn't get any interaction between Oscar and his bullies for like maybe 200 pages
I had, like,
before that ending point, because all of the interactions with Oscar is either Oscar by himself or Oscar with Eli. And he's not going to school for whatever reason, and he doesn't really see those kids. And the last time we had seen them was when he had like hit that one guy over the head and broke his eardrum. And then at the end, there's like a really quick scene where like one of them holds him in front of a train. And then the ending scene, which is like this. Are you okay?
No, go ahead. Continue.
Okay. The ending scene where it's like this really super violent.
My brother just texted me to say that if we shut the door, the room will look brighter.
It's true.
No, I was attacked by a pillow.
Thanks.
Like,
in case anyone was curious who our viewer is.
It's the one viewer.
No.
Gretchen's family.
Yep.
So yes, that was my like that part had a little bit of a disjointed thing, and that was definitely in like the writing of the original text, because unless he's omitting entire scenes, you get this
that's what I mean about the plot being weird. Like, it's at one point it felt like it was trying to connect too many like wires to an out, like to something that wasn't.
So the bully plotline is supposed to be the catalyst of why Oscar leaves, and why he's okay with maybe murdering people and all of that thing. Like, he
But
he's brutalized by these boys, and like at the very beginning, I'm like, I would understand him wanting to murder these kids, and like by the
that
end,
was one of the best done parts. The beginning,
right?
with him wanting to
the
murder
beginning
them.
was good. But that's also why I said earlier that I felt like the bullies were inserted to do things, like whereas other characters, like even if I didn't like reading about them, were inserted to say something or portray something. Like I think one of my big things in the beginning of the book was like following the group of men in like Virginia, like Jacques, like I didn't, whatever their names are, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, and Vixen. Like I was like, why are we doing this? And then you get into like Virginia being turned, and I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. And that like ended up saying something, whereas the bully boys were literally inserted where they needed to go to make a thing happen. Does that make sense? Like I don't like.
They didn't have their own lives. They felt like a plot.
Well, and then they tried to be like, oh, because we don't know our dad and whatever. And it was like, they tried real hard to pretend, you know what I mean? But it just felt like pace it on in a certain way compared to everything else that's happening and everyone else. I just don't like feeling like things have been done to make a plot to a thing.
It reminded me of A Tale for the Time Being. The way that Now is treated by her classmates, or trying to do that thing where like the entire class sort of ostracizes this one person, and it's not that they all like actively hate her or him in this case, but like there's a couple that are like super active in their hatred and everybody else just sort of goes along with it. It felt very much like that, but not done as well or done as consistently. Maybe because there were so many plot elements that were trying to be sort of circled in together. It lacked that, but there were moments of like genuine, like it felt like a real bullied relationship in a lot of ways, especially I think that the scene on the ice when Oscar hits what's his face over the head.
Yeah, they were well done scenes, but they weren't integrated.
They didn't.
They were
That's
forgotten.
why I didn't
about.
have word congealed earlier. Like they tried to go together, but like there was some parts sitting on top. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was a very, very good idea that in practice didn't do this.
Not as much attention was paid to them as maybe.
And yeah, it made the ending feel a little bit out of left field. Like the bully needing to get retribution because the one guy hit him in the ear and then
that was his favorite ear.
Burned the stuff.
Favorite ear.
I think the real thing was that it was burned the thing from their father.
Yeah, that was the real thing.
But like,
okay, but like they literally were so upset they like attacked a teacher.
Yeah.
Like they had to, that was crazy. I think the one thing about that I didn't think was crazy was Eli's extremely violent reaction. That Eli's character at that point had been built to the fact where I believe that Eli liked Oscar and wanted that relationship with Oscar, and also B would totally just be like, gonna chop off some heads tonight. Bam!
Those
like
fuckers are hurting my friend.
Yeah, like
how
that,
dare
that
you?
didn't come out of left field for me. I was like, oh boy.
I feel like the thing that didn't get pushed enough with the beating up of the teacher is that the teacher was an outsider. He was from another country, spoke weird.
He was my favorite, actually.
He was an interesting character, and I wish we had seen him more because he tried to do this like fatherly thing to Oscar. And he was like, no, you're gonna do what's good for you. You can't keep it all bottled up. It's not good for you. And like, I really liked him as that. So then the boys sort of had this, it's the outsiders versus us mentality, but they didn't show it enough.
Yeah. And it's also a shame because
that I think is actually the weakest plot. It is definitely the bully plot line, which is the weakest plot line in the book. The others are slow and they take a while to get where they're going, but they end up getting together always.
Yeah.
Even if they're not the most interesting all the time.
And I'm thinking it's a shame because the teacher was such a better influence than Ely. In the sense that, like, Ely is a terrible, terrible character. And, like, we were having the discussion, it's like, I don't know if I really understand him going off in the end on the train, but it's like, no, that makes perfect sense for Oscar, because he's completely manipulated and misled, and it's just a terrible... Ely should not be alive.
No.
That's not fair to anyone.
No, because Ely is the catalyst to it all.
And, like, literally, it's just the thing, like, oh, well, if I don't feed, then this parasite is going to get out and feed on people. But, like, you're already a parasite. You're just casually destroying people's lives, and even if you technically rescued Oscar from the bullies, I don't think anyone's life is enriched.
If you take the description that Virginia gives during her shift, transformation, whatever you want to call it, her infection, and like how she kind of describes that the parasite is taking over, and that if she doesn't do something soon, she'll lose her ability to make her own choices. You kind of have to assume that Eli stopped being Eli a while ago, because
when the penis fell off,
having continued to feed, like, that parasite would have taken over. That's what Virginia's trying to.
But at the same time, I feel like not quite.
Ely is always making that decision, and they have the conversation about it. Ely is just making a really destructive decision, which I can't really fault, but I can, like, oppose the character.
How are you opposing the character then?
Oh, just like thinking that they should be dead, in all fairness.
Okay. You're like, I know.
It's a philosophical conclusion, not like...
I mean, yeah.
That's what Virginia's conclusion came to.
What? And I really actually liked Eli's, like, musing in himself about why he continues to do it, and he's like, maybe it's because I was so young that, like, the part of my brain that feels regret isn't completely formed in the way
because he does always have those regressions.
Yeah, and he said that his brain, he's always 12, like, he's not like an adult in a child's body, which I liked that idea because it made Eli and Oscar's friendship more valid, because Eli is a perpetual child and not stuck in a child's body.
I think it also makes Eli more dangerous too.
Yes,
more of a scary character.
The children vampire, because they're terrifying. They have no self-control in the same way that adults do.
Whereas Virginia was a grandmother in her late 50s and was a little different in her approach.
Yeah. And I mean, she thought about it. She was like, I'm going to go and it's somebody I know, and but I don't really care about, is tangential. And it's a guy with, like, PTSD who just takes care of cats. Like, completely on the outskirts.
That was a fucked scene.
That happened. Right?
That was one of the more memorable parts of this book.
Those poor cats. Those poor
Jesus.
cats.
I don't feel bad for those cats. That was terrifying.
I feel bad for the cats. It was terrifying, but I feel bad for the cats.
The cats didn't have to start that fight.
They felt they did. They were just protecting their master.
Cats would have beaten him anyway.
The last description in that scene is of a cat that can't quite use its back legs, being sad it didn't get to take part. It's like, but everybody else got to have fun.
I do also, that brought to mind the other scene that I really quite liked when Ely goes to, this is right after Håkan, I guess was her guardian, gets hospitalized, and she goes to that old woman's house. And it's just like, that very drawn out scene was great. But I also thought the aftermath of her just being completely wrecked on morphine was unsettling and very darkly funny.
It was kind of weird, and like her like touching the TV.
Yeah, like it was very clearly supposed to be almost slapstick.
Yeah.
12-year-old vampire who's just drugged after killing this woman. Just also horrifying.
Yeah, I also liked the weird conundrum of the old lady like getting up and running out because she clearly had been infected, but like also Eli had set the house on fire, so she burned her to death, which is I guess one of the ways that he killed the parasite. Yeah. And then all of the people being like, I mean, she was dead, but also we have accounts of her running and moving, and that doesn't make sense. And like I kind of like it added aspects to the story of like how people are so confused by what's going on here and have no idea. And like we know because we've been let in on the secret, but the people that this is happening to still have no idea what's going on.
It was strongest when someone was dying or there was something like serial crime police thing going on. That seems to be Lindqvist's strength. Although this was his first published novel, so perhaps that was just where he was coming from and he's developed in other areas.
That's fair. Any sort of debut is usually your weakest, and it shows the things that you shine in, and then you often grow.
And that appears to be
from there. And I mean, again,
graphic detail.
So should we talk for a hot second about the pedophile who poured acid on his face?
What's there to say?
Because like, I feel like we keep mentioning his name though, and don't actually talk about like
him and his art.
Because that was something that I thought it was just like, all right, creepy old, like he exists to be super creepy and like be a pedophile and have really, really uncomfortable scenes. And then he tries to kill a dude, gets caught, pours acid on his face, becomes even creepier. Like, I think out of everything I was disturbed by in this novel, I was disturbed by him the most.
He was very much a body horror element.
Because every time you thought, like, you were done with him, it just gets worse. Like, not only is he now acid scarred, but then he jumped out a 10th-story window and gets back up. And then he's just completely zombified in the sense that it's just Parasite running him. So then it's just each part chips something away, and then you have the scene with him and Ely in the woods, and it's very distressing. That was a part I needed to take a break during. That was the only part in this book where I just needed to step away.
The rape scene?
Yes.
Or attempted rape scene?
Yes.
And the following poor Tommy in that fucking room.
I didn't have a problem with that. I got through that fine. The trophy smasheroo was, I was okay.
I think that's like, he literally was Hawken was the horror that just kept coming back. And you were like, okay, like he's a pedophile. This is gross, can't get worse. And then he like pours acid on his face.
He always felt bad about it.
Zombie, can't get worse. Jumps out a 10-story window, can't get worse. Like tries to rape you, like can't get worse. No, please stop. I'm done.
I liked the almost innocent question that Eli had of like, how is he hard?
She's yeah. Oh.
It was like the whole scene was traumatizing and terrible, but like the way that started.
Thanks for the caveat. Just as an aside, yes, it was terrible, but
it brought into question for me this idea that if the host dies, the parasite continues just to live. Because if the host was completely dead, that would not be happening. Like, because Eli was like, he's going to seek me out. And I'm like, why? Because you're his maker? Is there like some sort of weird connection? but it was like a sexual thing, and I was like, that's the thing that's exclusive to that guy. Like he wanted her, him, it, eunuch.
Unless like something about like the base psyche of the host remains, and like maybe not, because I mean that is also like a biological thing. It's not just something that like Hawken would have been thinking. Like it's something that happens to his body when like he.
And I mean technically he did die.
Explain it more, Gretchen.
While being sexually stimulated, so maybe that also has an aspect of it that he gets paused there, and like that's it. I don't know. I don't know how to like.
As we all consider the implications.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Though. I think thinking about him is the thing that after the book is over makes me the most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He was definitely the big bad, despite Eli the big bad, if that makes sense. Like, Eli's the monster, but Hawken is like...
Eli's the monster you don't realize is the monster.
Right.
It hits the point where, like, oh, Eli's the terrible thing, but then it spends the rest of the book trying to, like, demystify and, you know, declaw Eli as a character, whereas he just gets worse and worse. But Eli's actually awful.
So says Taylor. I don't think Eli's... Eli. You're killing me here. Elias. His name was Elias.
Yeah. In the audiobook, it actually goes with Eli when it's a female pronoun, but then when his, I guess, background is revealed, it switches to Eli.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
I guess that kind of makes sense to make it more effeminate.
Because it is meant to be a kind of vague first name.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say.
But then I also, by the end, I consider Eli to be a gendered, like a neutral character.
Eli's a manipulative character, but I also feel like there's a genuine protectiveness built into Eli's character, because when she finds Hawken at like when you have that scene of them meeting, it's you're gonna help me, but I'm also gonna help you.
But that's like, just the sell. It always seemed to be taking advantage of him in a very calculated way.
It brings up, though, is that, like, most emotional manipulators don't think they're being an emotional manipulator. And especially as someone constantly a 12-year-old child, like, you also, like, a lot of 12-year-old children think that they're, like, entitled to something that, like, they aren't, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that one of this, again, scarier things about Eli is that they have this power to emotionally manipulate people. They think
just by being themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, so it's not something that, but because they are perpetually 12, it's not something that they have like interrogated about themselves. Yeah. They're just like, this is a thing and I'm lonely, so like, bring on the people, and like I don't want to be alone. I don't want to, you know what I mean? So I think Eli represents a manipulator who doesn't know what they are, and doesn't know to ask themselves if that's what they're doing.
And most are sort of unknowing, ignorant manipulations, because it's somebody being like, well, I need this, and you'll give it to me if I do this, but I don't always want to do this, so I'm going to make you do things in order to receive the thing that you want, which for Hawken was like holding Eli, touching Eli, creepy, pedophilic. Yeah. But like also with Oscar, it was just companionship that Oscar wanted, and that's more what Eli could give freely and ended up like actually enjoying the company of, because at some point Eli went from saying I don't ever want to infect anyone because it sucks, and me being like, too late, motherfucker, you already infected lady over there, to being like, would you ever want to be like me? To Oscar, like he debated turning Oscar to be together So there is this genuine compassion inside of something that,
or at least the appearance of it. Maybe Ely like kind of goes through it thinking that that's how it's supposed to work, but doesn't necessarily follow it. Because the thing I got from Hoken's arc is that he starts out as just very pitiful, but not threatening, because so much of his background was trying to emphasize that these are desires he cannot deal with, and he feels absolutely horrible and disgusting because of it. And one of the reasons latching onto Ely is important, because he can make the connection that this is psychologically older than a child. So it is a way to play out this fantasy in a way that does not actually harm anyone in the way that his traditional desire would have. And then it's through exposure and following through Ely's requests that like sends him even worse instead of tempering that. I think it just allows it to flourish in very unhealthy ways.
I'm not sure how I felt about the conflicted pedophile, though.
It makes sense, though, because that's actually a thing.
It does. Like, he knows he's not supposed to want this, but, like, his body wants it, and, like, sometimes he gives in the way that, like, people who know they shouldn't, people who are addicts shouldn't do drugs, but they sometimes give in and do drugs because there's,
yes, this is him trying to go through this fantasy in what he sees as a non-dangerous way.
But Eli was very clear that Eli was a child the whole time. Like, I don't know. I don't think Eli ever gave the impression that he was anything other than what he was. I don't ever think any of his interactions was him trying to, like, seem older.
It was all... It did always feel
way.
like leading him on, though, with that. I don't want to actually use the phrase leading him on because of every possible connotation that could make is bad. But Ely was definitely using that deliberately to get what they wanted.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's also something too in the power of being wanted, because I think Eli's problem is that they have been around for a while, and like they're never wanted. Like this happens every time they go somewhere, is they have to leave immediately. So like just the idea that Hawken would want anything to do with Eli, I think like that's also powerful. It's like knowing that someone wants to be around you.
But I also think that because of the age that Eli was, the fact that Eli is a eunuch is describing that Eli has no sexual desire.
Is a being without sex.
Probably doesn't understand it in any way. Like can understand it as a motivator that for some reason Hawken wants this, and it's kind of creepy and weird, but because he's never experienced physical desire in that way, he can't be like held accountable for that sort of thing because he doesn't understand it. It is a foreign concept. It would be like me, I don't even know, me holding drugs in front of a person who's a drug addict. Yeah, to get them to do something for me if I didn't know drugs were bad.
Yeah, because I think it's partly Eli being a child and just like not comprehending. Although like part of me also wonders, like I mean, if you've been around long enough.
Yeah, I'm less inclined to
also
give.
Get the impression that turned him was pedophilic.
That's true.
As well. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is an important aspect of Ely's past being very unclear. So we can have those discussions.
How many people tell you things?
It's most of it's my family.
I know. It is almost 11 o'clock though. So
which means we've been at this for like an hour and 15.
All right. Well.
I say it was a good book because we were discussing it in that way.
No, I mean, I think that's
interesting
what I mean. Like, if I had come into it expecting think piece, I think that I would have like handled it, approached it
differently.
Felt a really different way. But I don't know, even saying that like I was expecting to be scared, but I was expecting to feel more, to react more. I was expecting to be more reactive, and again, it doesn't mean that like, you know, things had to jump out of corners. Like I was expecting more of like the squicky, this or just like the psychological effect, which didn't.
It showed up in very particular places, but was not a constant throw.
I mean, this was a very even-keeled book, which was not, to the point of sometimes just being like monotonous at times with certain things.
It's just Nordic fiction.
Just Nordic fiction. Just a snowdrift.
Yeah.
Sadness, coldness, and apathy.
A lot of white people.
Well, I liked it.
A lot of rape, or at least threat of it. Yeah. They don't mess around in their fiction. They just like go straight for like, jugulars in very casual ways.
I don't think it
not
was
without like no, I don't mean like without gravity. I just mean like
I feel like the
like
rape
you said,
scene
very even way
was better than the rape scene in friggin' The Magician King.
I'm glad that we have to have this discussion. Oh God, The Magician.
I still need to read the last book in that series.
Hey guys, you know what our New Year's
it's Christmas. It's almost Christmas.
The last 3 fucking years, none of us want to read that goddamn book.
But it's Christmas, guys. That's when we did it last times. We need to read The Magician Land.
This is an example, I think, of rape done properly with the proper amount of gravitas and like.
Yeah, respect.
Yeah, if you have to, if you're thinking of including it, you can't just be like, bam! It's not a jump scare. It's not a function of something. It's like
it was always like a threat. It was always a possibility, and it isn't until this final moment and this like very confusing and very conflicted thing that's going on that it finally happens, and it's not left.
It's also not just thrown in because rape's the worst thing that could happen to a female character, which is what happens in The Magicians.
No,
that's the reason it's done.
Yeah.
No.
So again, if you're thinking about reading this book and you're not into horror, you can read it. I made it through, and most of my feelings were bored. Like now that we're discussing it, I'm getting into it more. But like sitting there reading it as a reading experience on my own, not that exciting. Like I said, I think there's a lot of things to think about after you finish reading it, especially if you have people to discuss it with.
It's also just really long.
Yeah. It is long.
It's long.
Very long.
If you don't want to do that, watch the movie. I mean, like I enjoyed the movie. It is also a slow burn and not scary, but
compare the movies.
Yeah, maybe do that.
Write a think piece.
Compare the movies to what we talked about in the book, because they did do some things differently, which could be better or worse depending on your opinion.
Does the penis fall off?
The next time that we're gonna be live, it's probably gonna be that Magician episode that none of us really wants to do, but we should do just to get it out of the way.
Like I feel like we have to finish it. Like at this point, like
I mean,
they've been so popular for us, first of all, and secondly, I think that like we might hate them all, but these are the books that like we keep bringing up, like we keep thinking about them. So like we have to close. We literally have to close the book on this. We have to finish the series, lock it up, make it go away.
Because if we don't, we're gonna have to finish the Philip Pullman series that we were supposed to do.
That's different though, because
we have apathy towards that series. The
Magician is actual hate.
That's true.
Literally, our last Pullman episode, even though we had Casey there, was us going, so I took a nap during this book and like didn't miss anything.
No. Yep. So that's the thing. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good night. Mwah. Mwah. No kisses from Taylor, though.
You get nothing.